So growing up, I actually really enjoyed going to church. It was something I looked forward to doing, and I continue to do through my teenage years. However, as a teenager, I was pregnant at one point, and I heard the priest speaking about premarital sex, and I just felt this guilt, like I didn't belong in church. I felt like this is not for me, this is not my place, and it really turned me away from any kind of relationship with God for several years. My whole entire life, I've struggled with anxiety and depression, and that's something, even as an adult, I always struggled with. 5 years ago, when my youngest was born, my anxiety really just skyrocketed. I was scared to even leave the house for the few months after he was born. During that time, my sister, who posted a picture of a mom's group that was meeting here on bi-weekly, and I just felt like I needed to be part of it. I needed something to get me out of the house. I needed some friends in the area. And so I reached out to her and asked her, how do I become part of this group? And I started attending regularly. I was a little hesitant to join the group because of my relationship or lack of relationship with God and Jesus at the time. So one of the questions I had for my sister was, is this okay? Can I be part of this group? I just need the community that I think I can get from it. She said, go ahead, come join. And so I went. I found myself really respecting, really building bonds and relationships with these women who had relationships with Christ themselves, and seeing their journeys, hearing about their stories. Little by little, I felt like my wall with Jesus started to come down. And I no longer had this like, no, I'm not interested in religion, to, you know what, yeah, I'll go to church on Sunday, let me check it out. Something that for 20 years I did not even want to hear about. So one of the women that I met through this mom's group actually became a very good friend of mine, and she invited me to start meeting with her on Saturdays to kind of start our own little growth group. I actually purchased my first Bible ever. I started listening to Bible apps. I started reading scripture on my own. I met another mom. It was an acquaintance, but I was always drawn to. So when her growth group opened up, the next season, I actually reached out. I'm like, hey, do you mind if I join your group? This was February 2020, right before the world shut down. So I made it to one of the meetings. Something in that meeting, that particular session, I cried. It was so freeing, like I'd really found my place. I felt safe. I felt like I could be vulnerable and I could be open, which is something that I've never had been able to do my entire life. The leader at that point needed some help with running the Zoom meetings, and that was something that I felt like I was able to help her out. So by default, I kind of became her co-leader. When the next series launched, Rooted, my co-leader and I were really excited because this is something that was really about deepening your faith, your own personal journey with Jesus and with God. We were asked to share our testimony as leaders. So I took the time to reflect back, and thinking back on my journey, that's when it really became obvious. God's been with me this entire time. That afternoon, I remember I was on my way to pick up my son, listening to worship music, and I just had this like, oh, I'm ready to be baptized, something I never thought I was gonna do. At that point, I made the decision, I'm ready, I'm doing this, and I am fully in. Just knowing like, hey, I finally feel like I have community, I feel like I'm on the right path, and I feel like, again, everything's gonna be okay, God's got this. This Jonah series actually really resonates with me because knowing that God was pursuing Jonah and just showing him like, you need to go down this path, continue down this path, even when Jonah wasn't sure. I know that God was pursuing me during that season, that he had a plan the entire time, and part of that plan included those struggles that I went through, but led me to having a relationship with him. Just knowing that God has so much grace and so much love for us, no matter what we are going through, no matter what we've done, no matter where we've been. He is there, and he is not going to turn his back on you, has just made me feel like I can relate to Jonah's story. I think a lot of times we wait for that perfect opportunity where I'm in the right place, I'm going to start going to church, I'm going to start going to groups, I'm going to start meeting people. There's never going to be a perfect time, I can tell you that. I waited for so many years and it did not come up. You have to be willing to accept that things are going to be messy, you're going to be vulnerable, and with that, that's where the meaningful relationships really come.